Hey guys, welcome back. This is still chapter 7, multifactorial traits, but we are on our last section, section 4, which we're just going to talk about some multifactorial traits in humans. We're just really going to kind of briefly mention two of them, heart health and body weight. We're not going to get into too much detail. And then, as always, at the end of the chapter, we have our additional resources. All right, so let's get going. Get the show on the road. So heart health. Genes that control cholesterol metabolism, leukocyte adhesion, and blood pressure greatly influence the risk of developing cardiovascular disease. So what that means is we do have genes that affect the likelihood of certain heart issues like heart disease or heart attacks, things of that nature. So we have genes that control how effectively we can break down cholesterol. That's the cholesterol metabolism. Or leukocyte adhesion. So how sticky are our cells, our blood cells? Do they want to stick together all the time or only some of the time, like when we're clotting? And then blood pressure. So when the heart has to squeeze to pump blood, does it have to give like a hard squeeze or just like a normal squeeze? Now, a lot of that could also be related to the thickness of your blood vessels themselves. So those are all controlled by genes. Still, there are environmental factors for this. You can have the best heart health genes in the world, but if you don't exercise, you eat a lot of greasy, fatty, really bad for you, high cholesterol foods and whatnot, you smoke, and just take very poor care of yourself, then that could very easily lead to cardiovascular disease, even though your genes are wonderful. On the other hand, if you got some of the not as healthy genes for heart health, but you're really diligent about what you eat, when or what type of exercises you do, how often you do your exercises, not doing drugs or smoking or drinking or anything like that. If you're very conscientious about that, then you can still live a very healthy life without cardiovascular disease. Allele-specific probes may be used to generate multi-locus genotype data for assessing genetic risk, meaning that there are these little probes that they can actually create that will attach to particular alleles. So if you have an allele for leukocyte adhesion in terms of making your leukocytes, your blood cells, too sticky, then they can actually inject that probe into one of your cells and they can see if it attaches to the DNA. If it does, it means you have that particular allele for extra sticky leukocytes. So by having these allele-specific probes, it allows us to look at, all right, which alleles do you have? Which ones do you not have? And if you have cardiovascular disease, but you don't have any of these particular alleles that we're looking for, it means it's probably not necessarily because of a genetic risk factor. You weren't predisposed to it. It was based more on your environment. All right, body weight. So obesity is a growing problem here in the US because we like tasty foods. I do too. And tasty food oftentimes is not the best for you. A lot of the bad foods for you are also cheaper, and a lot of the healthier foods are more expensive. And also we tend to be really busy, so we tend to go with, quicker meals and all that. So I'm not trying to make excuses, but this is a lifestyle of many people here in the US. So as a result, eating less than ideal food, going with more quick dinners that could be high in sodium or whatnot, we do tend to see obesity as a growing problem. Plus, we tend to lead more sedentary lifestyles. We're not as physically active. Now, there are two proteins that I want to talk about that affect your body weight because they affect your appetite. The first is leptin. So this is a protein, specifically a hormone, and what it does is it suppresses your appetite and will increase your metabolism rates. Now, the reason why this works is because let's say you just came back from a big meal, your stomach is all full, and or even like a comfortable meal, your stomach is all full. The filled stomach, so the actual having stuff in your stomach, causes a homeostatic response. It causes a reaction that leads to the secretion of leptin hormone into your blood system. Now, what that does is it tells your brain that you are no longer hungry, no more food for you. And then it will also increase your metabolism to break down the food that is already in your stomach. Now, I don't know if you've heard about this, but something I've heard of is when you're eating, if you're not quite sure, near the end of the meal, it's like, do I want something else or should I just stop where I'm at? Something that I've been told, which is very good advice, is if you're not sure if you should eat anything else, stop and wait. Give it like 5 to 10 minutes. And the reason for that is it does take some time for the leptin to be secreted and to get where it needs to and cause that chemical reaction that says, all right, appetite is suppressed. I don't need to eat anything else. Which is why sometimes if we just have a whole bunch of food in front of us, we gorge ourselves and then we're like, oh my goodness, I'm so stuffed. My tummy hurts so bad. Why did I eat that last thing? Because you were eating faster than the leptin could be produced, so you didn't have time to register the appetite suppressants. Another hormone is neuropeptide Y, and this is actually the opposite of leptin. What happens is leptin levels become low in your body as you finish digesting your meal. So once your digestion is finishing up, you've finished your meal, you've broken it all down, the leptin levels are lower at this point. So the fact that there are low leptin levels, try saying that 5 times fast, then that actually creates a homeostatic response that triggers the release of neuropeptide Y. And what neuropeptide Y is, when it's secreted and released, it is going to circulate through your system and increase your appetite. It's going to be the one that says, oh man, I feel hungry. You're going to get that stomach growling. Actually, what the stomach growling is just your stomach trying to digest stuff, but there's nothing there to digest. Anyways, so that's when you start getting like those hunger pains and something like, oh man, I'm kind of munchy. Oh, now I'm really hungry. So that's essentially what that is. And then you eat. Then there's the trigger for the leptin. That's produced, suppresses your appetite, increases metabolism. As your digestion continues, leptin levels decrease, and thus, once again, triggering neuropeptide Y. It's a nice little system. However, let me rephrase that. So, if the genes that control leptin or neuropeptide Y or other proteins that are related to appetite and metabolizing, if those are different, then they actually can have a significant effect on body weight. For instance, what if you naturally, for whatever reason, you have a mutant allele that naturally keeps higher levels of leptin in your body? You might just really never be hungry and you might not eat that much, and that could lead to some health problems. People might think that you have an eating disorder when really it's that your appetite suppressant hormone is just on overdrive. Or what if you have too much neuropeptide Y? Then you'll always feel hungry no matter how much you've had to eat. So these can affect your body weight because they can affect how your body is responding, or even metabolism. People have different metabolisms, and a lot of that are controlled by genes. So someone with a higher metabolism is going to need to eat more to maintain certain energy levels than someone with a lower metabolism. But someone with a lower metabolism, they might eat the same amount as someone with a higher metabolism, but they're going to gain a lot more weight. So a lot of these are the genetic controls. Now, again, also choice, boredom. A lot of people eat out of boredom, or we just choose to eat the wrong foods. Yeah, that's the environmental factors that will also affect body weight. They have done studies with the Pima Indians who are found in Arizona and Mexico. And what they've noticed is that they kind of, by studying them, they've noticed the role of environment in controlling body weight. And what I mean by that is you actually see higher rates of both obesity and type 2 diabetes. Now, normally you don't see those together. You might see obesity, you might see type 2 diabetes, but you don't normally see both of those together. They're not normally associated together, especially so frequently in a population. So that likely tells us that there is something else with the, I don't want to say the invention, but with new foods being brought into their diets were nicely, the original diets of like the original Pima Indians were very healthy, and they ate certain foods because it supplied them with certain vitamins and minerals that helped them with their metabolism. But with a lot of the modern foods, the current Pima Indians, they tend to see a lot more health issues in terms of obesity and diabetes too with the modern food. And it could just be because there's something that they are lacking, whether it's a gene that isn't able to increase their metabolism because it's lacking a certain mineral or vitamin that was essential to it in their original diet. But because of this, we tend to see these higher rates within this group of people. Now, these are some factors that can affect your weight. Your circadian rhythm, yes, sleep can affect your weight. And how much sleep versus, if you're not getting enough. As you get older, your metabolism does naturally slow down. You can't keep eating the same foods. Also, you tend to have a harder time digesting certain types of foods as you get older. Your lifestyle, are you active or do you tend to just kind of sit on your butt all day? I'm not really one of them. Your diet, what kind of foods are you eating? Are you eating, fruits, veggies, good sources of protein, or are you eating greasy bacon and burgers all the time? I'm not judging. I love greasy bacon and burgers too. Do you smoke? Because that's going to affect your heart and your lungs, which will then affect your lifestyle, which can then contribute to gaining weight. Same with drugs. We already talked about the genetic factors. There's also something called epigenetics, which we'll get to at a later date in a later chapter. And that's how things in the environment actually affect how and when genes get expressed. So they kind of change the expression of the genes without changing the DNA. Yeah. All right, so let's talk about some of our additional resources. The first one is Science in Pajamas. We do have 2 of these. We have one on polygenic traits, and I'm kind of using this polygenic traits as synonymous with multifactorial traits. It's just harder for me to add in the environmental factors when I'm giving an example, because those can have any number of degrees of influence. And then I also do a polygenic trait cross example. So in this one, we are looking at how 3 genes can affect, let's say, skin color, and then we'll look at how the additive effect will result in different colors, and we'll actually graph it to show that nice bell-shaped curve. Additional resources or other videos, we have Children's National Hospital Multifactorial Inheritance. We have Open Pediatrics Multifactorial Inheritance. We have AK lectures on polygenic inheritance. We have Khan Academy on heritability. We have Khan Academy on twin studies and adoption studies. We have useful genetics on genome-wide association studies. That's the one using SNPs. 2 students work on Pima Indians disease and diabetes. And then Steve Gorshwith talking about multifactorial traits. All right, so I hope this helps you guys out. I will post a link for this in the video description. This way you can have access to the additional resources as well. So the link for the Prezi will be included. If you have questions, hit me up in our Google Classroom or via email or in our regular classroom. But yeah, that's it. All right, guys, that's the end of chapter 7. Stay awesome, stay amazing, stay curious, stay safe and healthy. All right, guys, take care. All right, guys, bye-bye.